Sister Cecile Marie Brown.
Good morning, Jody.
Yes, I'm privileged to be able to interview you today, and I'd like to tell the visiting audience, the viewing audience, let us say, our sisters and our family and friends, how inspired I have been knowing you here on the Adrian Dominican Mother House campus. You are forever, ever giving. And I'd like to know, did that come from your dear family in Rockford, Illinois?
You'd like to know more about them?
Yes.
Well, there were 4 girls and 2 boys. And my sister, 3 years after I entered, became an Adrian Dominican. And later on in her life, when she was in her 80s, she had a stroke. And her classmate found her on the floor in the closet when she was going to take her out to eat one Sunday. She didn't know she was there, and she started to vacuum. And then she heard this groaning. She went in the closet, which was across the front of the house, and saw her. And she panicked, and she called Sister Ann Seraphin what to do, and she said, call the paramedics. My sister does not remember being taken down. She lived above my sister in an apartment in her home, was upstairs. She does not remember being taken to the hospital. But the nice thing about it is that she survived. She wasn't crippled or anything, but she had a little loss of memory and thinking. And she came to Adrian, was encouraged to come. And I didn't tell her I was coming in '09. I wanted to surprise her and take her out to eat or do anything for her I could. And she died 6 months before I came. So she never knew. And at the funeral, Donna Markham, it was her last year, she went up to the coffin to see her and just look at her. And I went up with Donna and I said, you know, Donna, she probably heard I was coming. And she said, I'm getting out of here before she gets here. And Donna laughed. She got a big kick out of that.
What was Marilyn's religious name?
William Marie.
William Marie.
Yeah. That was the religious. So there were 4 girls and 2 boys, and my mother and dad have all passed away. But my youngest sister, she's 83. In fact, she called me at Easter. And she's in assisted living facility because of her loss of memory, too. So they're just the 2 of us.
What was your baptismal name, Cecilia?
What, pardon me?
Your baptismal name.
Barbara Jane Mary Brown. Barbara Jane, and my confirmation was Mary.
And why did the name Cecilia Marie come your way? What providence?
My oldest sister was Cecilia. I had great respect for her. She taught me a lot as a kid. My grandma was from Ireland, and she had that middle name, and my mother had the middle name. So I decided to take my oldest sister and my youngest sister's name, Cecilia Ann. My youngest sister was Rosemary Ann Brown. So I had 3 names. My top one was Cecilia Ann after my 2 sisters. When I got into Mother Gerald's office and knelt before all of our crowd, she said, Cecilia, I'm going to give you a different name. She said, you're going to be called Cecilia Marie. It's more musical.
Well, it is more musical.
And so I do think it is. I kind of like it now. Now that she mentioned it. Yeah, it's more musical than Cecilia Ann.
And did the congregation give you a card after your profession and send you out to teach?
That's right.
Where were you sent?
First, I was sent to St. Bridget's in the middle of the year. And the oldest nun answered the front door. And she said, Sister Florine is ill, but I'll take you up to her bedroom. So we went up to her bedroom, and she was in bed, and I introduced myself. And she said she wasn't feeling well. She was sick to her stomach. And I said, well, did you ever think of eating soda crackers? That settles your stomach. She probably thought, who's this young twerp I'm getting telling me what to do. But anyhow, it was wonderful.
Yes. You didn't enter right after high school, did you?
No, I worked a year. I worked a whole year. I worked at a dime store, a drug store, and a bank. I ended up, the drugstore was walking distance from my house. Pardon me. And the owner of the drugstore went by my house, he told me later, and he saw what a nice yard and everything, and so he hired me. Thought I came from a nice, and
Why did you wait a year?
well, I waited a year because Sister Andrew was a principal, and she told me there were two other nuns, two girls that were going to be nuns at the end of the following year. She wanted me wait and go with them, so there'd be three girls coming from Muldoon High School in Rockford. So I had to get a job to pay for all my clothes I'd had made and all that. So it gave me a year. When I look back on it, I wished I'd come right away, but you know, I just did what I was told to do.
Amen to that. What grade did you teach at Bridget's?
Well, I was sent in the middle of the year, and I was given fourth grade. I don't know whether the nun got sick or what happened, but I was given fourth grade. And Sister Florine told me to act like I was 50 years old, and I was just in my 20s. She said, act like you're 50 years old, and she gave me all this advice to going in the classroom for discipline and everything. And then after that year, I was first grade. And I enjoyed the first grade. I liked it a lot. And then after the first grade, I was asked to take the second grade. And I went along with that. At that time, we had phonics. We had summer school learning phonics. Phonics was a big thing in the community. And then in the middle of the second grade year, Mother Gerald sent for me to go to Grosse Pointe. The nun was having discipline problems with the kids running around the room, and she didn't want the pastor who came in school often on the first floor to see it. So she asked to have me come. And I felt terrible because I found out later in life that Rose Noreen and Leonida were using me as an experiment to go from first grade, second grade, and third grade, have the same teacher, and see what the results would be. But I didn't know that. And so I went and had second grade. And it might be interesting to you to know that I had Judy Benkert and Susie Schreiber in my class. And every time I meet Benkert, I said, I made you what you are today. I taught you how to read and write. And she laughs about it.
And she's in California today.
Yeah.
And Sue Schreiber's in
Yeah,
the
and
Detroit.
so they always greet me. And then after the second grade, something happened. I was promoted to first grade. And Virgin had first grade, and I had first grade. And I was right on the first floor where you could see all the cars and the limousines come with the kids and all, bus and all that stuff. And one day, they sat at tables, 4 on each side, tables in the first grade room. We didn't have desks. And I don't know why I thought of this or how, but I got an idea to get edging that used to put in the kitchen on the cupboard, on the shelves, that edging. And I got a roll of that, and I cut and made crowns, and every student had a crown. Now, if they misbehaved or talked, they had to put the crown on my desk. Well, they never did that because they would be the only one in the room without a crown, so I had a perfect class about discipline and they enjoyed it. And they left it there at night, and in the morning they came back and put it on. I don't know where I got that idea, but it's a wonderful idea.
What advice would you have for any new first grade teacher at this
Well,
point?
one thing is discipline is very, very important. You can't teach the children. You have to make the classes interesting, exciting, and you have to be patient with them, not yell at them. But I think there are all kinds of ways of thinking of discipline. When I was changed later in life, I went to a Star of the Sea, and I had after I was principal at Wall Lake, I stayed in the upper classes. I was always a primary teacher. And so I took a class at DePaul University from Dr. Dinkmeyer in group counseling. I have a master in counseling from Siena. He said to get a crate that a big refrigerator comes in, a box,
I mean, like a cardboard
box, and cut it so it's on an angle, two sides. Cut it two sides. Put it in the back of the room, put 2 chairs there, and write in big letters, "Talk it out." And anybody, there was a discipline problem, you send them back to that little box or whatever it is, and they sat and waited, and then you gave the children something to do, and then you went back to talk to them. They were scared to death to be alone with you in that little corner, not knowing what was going to happen. But I tell you, it worked. Nobody wanted to go. See, it's ideas like that you have to come up with. And I'm not, pardon me, I'm not sure that there is a book out on discipline. I don't know, maybe there is.
You probably should write one.
But it's very important for new teachers to come up with ideas. And I think the older nuns can all give them ideas.
When did you decide to do something other than teach in the classroom?
Well, that's very interesting because I have my notes here, if you don't mind if I use them.
No.
Okay. After retiring from teaching for 27 years, 1973 to 74, I created a senior citizen program at St. Bernadette's Church in Rockford. And I wrote to several pastors asking, and I got an interview and I was hired. They had never had a program before. And it worked so well. I had seminars, I had trips, I had all kinds of things. So then I went to Bishop O'Neill and had an appointment with him. And I said, "Bishop, what are you doing for the elderly in Rockford?" And he said he didn't know. And so I created a program under Catholic Social Service. Father Bavay was head of it at that time. From 1974 to 1982, programs for the elderly for 10 parishes in the Rockford area. Now, I didn't go to each parish unless they asked for me to come and talk. What I did is created programs at a certain, I created a program, pardon me, at a certain place, such as trips, pardon me, May crownings, different things where they could come to different parishes.
Give me an example of a trip. What you mean by a trip?
Well, I had a wonderful trip up to Cincinnati Mother House in the fall. They had their fall festival, and it was wonderful. And I had 3 Greyhound buses registered to go. I couldn't even take roll call. I went into each bus and made sure there was somebody in each seat because I had no way. They all went to different places, and I couldn't, the roll call was too big. And they loved it. They had dinner there, and they had different activities and things, so that was exciting. Back to 1982 to 84, I was principal of Holy Rosary in Darlington. And then it's interesting, 1984 to 85, I drove a year here in Adrian. Sister Maristella called me, and I said, "Well, I'm sending out my resume to find a job." And she said, "Well, we only have 1 driver, Cecilia. We need a driver so bad." So I said I would wait and see. She called 2 weeks later. And I said, "Well, I guess this is where God wants me to be because I've got no answer from my resumes." And so I said, "I'll come." So I packed up a box and shipped it and went on the bus. Now, the funny thing is, I went on the bus to Adrian from Rockford, and the box went by mail. And there was a detour in Chicago, and the bus got in late, meaning we transferred to the bus to Adrian, it'd get in late. So I had called the secretary of one of the provincials in Chicago and said, "Would you call Maristella at Adrian and tell her that I'll be late?" I got in Adrian, Toledo at 10 o'clock at night, and she met me with another nun, and she said, "No, Cecilia, you sleep in tomorrow because you've had a long trip, so you don't have to start till the next day." It was a wonderful time because that prepared me for coming now and retiring, because I knew how the whole setup was and how everything worked. And then when I was here, I didn't want to stay driving. I thought I still had something to give, and so I prayed. And the pastor at St. John the Baptist in Jefferson, Wisconsin, wrote me a letter and said he wanted me for his principal because I was his principal in Darlington. And so I went there, and I stayed, I think, a couple years. And then the rest of the story is this. 1988 to 89, I was administrator of Highview Retirement Home, a small retirement home in Rockford. And then after that, I was plant manager at the Immaculate Conception Home in Bartlett, Illinois. That means I took care of all the leaks and the snow plowing, anything that pertained to plant management. From there, I became director of the Senior Citizen Program Meet and Eat site in Sycamore for 6 years. And I led the rosary at St. Mary's Church in Sycamore every Tuesday morning.
What does meet and eat mean?
That's the government food program where they pay just a certain amount according to their thing. And I set up programs there of trips. I love teaching seminars. I gave them a long sheet of yellow paper and a pencil, and they took notes. And then I asked them to make suggestions, what they would like in the way of seminars, and they made suggestions for me to do it. But, and then I stood up the table, put confetti on all the lights and things to make it, well, you know, after I left, the whole place closed down. It's a zoo now. This man in town that, what do you call him? He had animals stuffed and everything, and he had it out on a shed on the farm, and he was going to retire, and he asked the city if they would take these elephants and tigers and all these things. And so every place I've ever been, when I leave, it turns into something else. It never says, I was at Catholic Social Service with Father Brevet for 6 years. That was sold to a Protestant church.
Oh, my.
And it's funny because at a nursing home, which I went and helped the priests give out communion and so on, some lady spit out her communion, and she put it in her missalette, paper missalette. And a lady came up and said she spit the communion. So I got the book, and I went to my office after Mass was over, and I called a priest, and I said, what do I do with this? Should I flush it down the toilet? I almost shocked him. I said, what should I do with it? He said, Sister, listen to me. He said, you go out and dig a hole and put that Blessed Sacrament in and cover it up. So at Catholic Charities, a young man dug a hole in front of the grotto, and I buried the Blessed Sacrament. It's so funny because now it's not a ritual. Protestant church place, you know. Anyway, leading the rosary, I went into church. I was new. And this lady said, oh, you're new here, aren't you? And I said, yes. I said, my brother is Bob Brown. He's on the radio station, DeKalb. Oh, she said, we all know him. She said, would you like to go out for breakfast? I said, oh, how nice. I found out that you say the rosary every Tuesday after Mass, and everybody pays for their own. We went to breakfast, but she didn't take me. We all paid for our own. So then after I left leading the rosary at St. Mary's Church and working at that community site, I was 85 years old, and I decided it's time for me to go. Now, when Donna sent that letter, she said if 10 or 15...
Are you talking about Sister Donna Markham?
Yes.
Yes.
She
Sent a letter.
And she said if 10 or 15 sisters would come home to the second floor Weber, we could save the community a lot of money. And I wrote her a letter right away and said, put me top on the list. And then I found out that you contact your prioress, not Donna. So I contacted Pat Delka, and she said, well, there are about 8 registered. Please get me in. Now, Joella at that time was in charge, and she sent a blueprint, and she gave us a choice of 3 rooms. And I chose the room facing the Novitiate Garden. It's small, and people didn't want it, but I don't think it's small. And it's the most wonderful thing that's happened to me, to look out that window morning, noon, and night and see the beautiful trees and the sky and God's creation. People, when I first came, they said, Cecilia, how do you like it over there? I got so tired of hearing it. I thought, I got to think up something. So I said, you know what? I feel like I'm on the front porch of heaven, and someday the door will open and I'll walk in.
Beautiful.
And some smart Alex said, do you have any chairs out there, Cecilia?
Oh, Cecilia, before we end, your age, please.
I was 92 in November.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I remember hearing that you were made superior You were asked to be superior. You were appointed superior at the age of 34.
That's right.
Does that seem possible now?
Well, it was hard. I wasn't prepared for it. You're never prepared for it or trained for it.
But weren't you lucky to have Dorothy Gettler and Lucy Quinn
Yeah,
and Mary Kay
I
Nolan?
had 3 nuns that are on this campus. They were all young. The best thing about the whole job was they were young. They were just, starting out. They weren't critical or anything, and we had a good time together. You can ask them that. I enjoyed being with them because they were a help to me.
Didn't they practice your funeral?
Yeah, one of them did. She put me on the floor and put 3 candles on each side and sang the requiem, So that's the kind of fun we had, And it made it good for me, too, because I went from primary teaching to 8th grade because I thought they'd look down at me if I was a first grade teacher and I was a principal. So I went to 8th grade, and I had a wonderful class, just a wonderful class. They could kid with me because one day they knew my routine that I always took my book out of the lectern and put it on top of the lectern. And so this one afternoon I did my regular thing, and there was a dead robin flattened out, pulled out, and I screamed. And of course they just roared. They knew I'd take it nicely, which I did. But they knew me pretty well. They knew how to deal with me, and
I'm sure they loved you. Before we end, your life now at Weber, how could you sum that up besides sitting on the front porch?
I think it's the most wonderful thing. I give Donna, and I've told Donna personally, I had lunch with her one day, and I thanked her for doing that. And then the practice started the 3rd floor, so we have about 30 or 15 on each floor. It's the closest thing to heaven. You have your privacy, you have your own shower, your own bathroom. We all are mature women. We all take care of ourselves, and still we're there for each other. If you needed help, all you have to do is call down your hall, and you'll get help, But I just love it. We have 3 buildings. Of course, ours is the furthest away. But I wouldn't want to be any other place at 92 as I prepare for the end of my life, that I'm in such a wonderful place.
And around friends that you have made or have been in your life throughout the years.
They're on the campus, and I try to see some of them that I've lived with, and minister to them. But I don't know anybody wouldn't want to come and retire here. You could, with 3 dining rooms, 2 chapels, the campus, all the walking that you can do for exercise. There's such a peace when you walk in the door. There just feels like you are almost in heaven. You're not there yet, but it's a peaceful feeling that I have that I wouldn't want to trade. I wouldn't go back and live in I've lived all my life in apartments. I've lived alone. I never lived with anybody. And I've lived in many different parts of Illinois and Michigan alone. And I wouldn't go back if you paid me, because we have community here. We end up our life together in the sisterhood.
You've come full circle.
Full circle, right?
Circle. God bless you.